Every day. It doesn't happen.
Budget hearing meeting to order. If we'll stand, I'll lead us in the pledge. Do I have a volunteer for prayer? Daniel will lead us in prayer. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our most kind Heavenly Father, we are grateful for this time we have today to meet together to discuss the needs of our county. We pray that Thou would bless all of us here, that we might be able to make decisions with wisdom. We also ask a special blessing upon our first responders, that they might be protected as they go about helping and serving us in this community. This we say in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
We called this meeting a couple days ago, as we were presented the numbers last Thursday morning, to have a little bit of time to walk away from the numbers, to evaluate some of our decisions and reflect upon those decisions before we give them back to the auditor one last time to send on to the state. And I'm just going to open up the table to see if there's any questions, comments, or concerns. There being none, I'll start off. I'll warm us up. What I did was just look at a couple things. I realized that some of the budgets went up and some of them went down. I also realized that we moved some things around. So what I did is I actually went back through the final pages and thought, when Keith writes this article and I get the phone calls, how am I going to defend what has been done? So with that slant, I just started going down on things that jumped out at me. If I'm not mistaken, at one time it was 290,000 and some change, so I rounded it to 300,000 to get us to the midpoint. I would gladly go to bat for our employees that we did our due diligence. We took a lot of the politics out of it. We backed our decisions on getting to the midpoint based upon numbers to make us a competitive employer going forward. We were also, when we looked at stair-stepping, the stair-stepping, in my opinion, and apparently the opinion of my fellow board members, was so small that we just took the hit and got it over with. I could also argue by doing that, it made it more equitable to some of the people that have been technically underpaid. So regardless of this slant or the question, I will go to bat for the $300,000 that we spent on getting to the midpoint. Next, I'd like to touch upon something that I do take personal and have for several years, and that's the increase in insurance. We had a gathering today. I wouldn't even call it a meeting. Josh had expressed some of my concerns, and Josh had some questions too. And we knew going back to a broker that, and I know just having worked with the health insurance for 21 years, that it's a very dynamic piece of budgeting. And today I realized that some of that increase, it's twofold. To explain it back to my counsel who has entrusted me for 21 years to help oversee it so that we don't get any surprises. And I know when I saw the 3.7, I was surprised. Even upon the original explanation in the insurance meeting with the fellow board members, I didn't wrestle that number at that time properly to where I didn't understand technically what they were saying. I thought I did, but then also I was hearing cost savings and some other things because we changed to a bigger network. What I wasn't anticipating was that our claims are up. So they kind of showed that. And being a relatively new under this new provider, our discounts are coming into play, but even with our discount, which is about 10% more than what it would have been, our claims are still up. Also, having the broker come in, and they did a much better job, more elegant at explaining it today, but that's their profession. We can fund it wherever, but they use an example of one county who never really looked at the numbers, and they were coming back 2 or 3 times a year to their council asking for chunks of change. We have been blessed. Several years ago, the state had a surplus somehow, and they gave us a bunch of money. We threw some in the rainy day, and we threw some in the insurance trust at the time. And we've been able to maintain roughly $1 million to 1.2 cash balance in that trust. But ideally, you want to have in your savings account some protection for, you can have expected, you can have the middle of the road, or you can have worst case scenario. I have been questions over the years when we had 1.2 and 1.5, what did I want? I used to say, and I used to get a chart and I'd go 1.875. Where did you get that number? Because I'd look down at the bottom, and if everybody got sick, if we had all the claims, that's what we as a board would have to make sure went back into the employees' insurance to cover everything. So why we had 1.2 or 1.5, I knew we were always 3 or 4 short, but we have ran in this safety zone for several years, i.e. not passing on additional costs to the employees, i.e. not because our actual costs haven't gone up that much. But this year it changed a little bit. Our claims went up, our costs have gone up, and through their actuaries, they have broken their charts down a little bit more, and I had those explained to me today in more detail. Expected midpoint and maximum cost. And the figure that, we thought as a board, not thinking so much on the financial, but it would be nice to have the midpoint there for safety reasons. we're not going to get to the midpoint in 1 year. And we talked about stepping that. So that $700,000 increase, part of that is a catch-up. Part of that is higher claims. And part of that is just a new philosophy of trying to get to this midpoint. They volunteered to come back if there was questions that they could answer to this board. I told them I would present that back to you. They know what they're doing. Their actuary is, after July claims, is only off $53,000, which is nothing compared to what's going on. So they're almost dead on what they thought we would do. And then they come out and they extrapolate the expected midpoint on percentages industry-wide. They're just moving targets. So there's some more reports that they're going to make available so I can get a better grasp of what's going on. You know, I told them my biggest concern over the years is I don't need to know that it's Mary that's sick. It's not my business. I don't even want to know that. I don't even care to know that it's employee 1, 2, 3, 4. But I need to know if Mary is at the beginning stages of cancer, or is it a car wreck with a broken leg? What's the claim for? Is it on a reoccur? Is it going to go over multiple years? So fortunately, they've been charting, this new company's been charting that on the backside. So I ought to be able to come back to this board next year and going forward and do better reports, because that's one thing I could do with the previous report. So I'm going to have access to that again. With that said, you know, we don't control the claims. We can only encourage wellness. And as people become ill or prior to ill, having signs, weight issues, sugar issues, cholesterol issues, that they take it upon themselves to protect the trust. You know, it's their individual right to live however they want, but if they've got group insurance, they kind of owe it to their fellow employees to take care of themselves. Any questions on that?
No, appreciate you breaking that down for us, though.
Then I went through and I thought, well, since this is please bear with me, and you can shut me up if you want. So then I looked at the clerk, and their budget was just minimal. And then I went to the very next one, and I had to stop again. So, but if you look at the auditor,
We are.
everybody pauses, about 240. But I, again, would go back and say, how do you cut out our new payroll system? How do you cut out bringing us up to a modern system that will benefit us going forward and should eliminate possible human error and possibly save us a lot of money going forward? We've been looking at doing this for years, It goes without saying that we got an auditor that this is the time to get it put into place and get it set up. Because if it does have some quirky mannerisms, it takes a quirky auditor to figure them out. Sheriff's Department, about $297,000 extra on the general fund. The one thing that I would once again just encourage this board to do is keep an eye on the pension, which was up about 190 of that. As more and more retirees get on that target will move. So the rest of it was all pretty much within line on the pension plan. The sheriff was kind enough to send me from McCready and Keene March 26th letter on where they had a recommended county contribution for the 20-year funding liability of $829,344. So that will change even as he retires and more retire. And so we probably ought to do a analysis on the backside. The actuaries can, but the sheriff needs to help us too by saying, okay, there's a high probability that in the next 2 years, 4 guys are gonna walk out the door. In the next 5 years, 6 guys are gonna walk out the door, because that'll fluctuate that number on top of everything else. So work with your sheriff. He's easy to work with. Picking on the sheriff, and then I'll be done. Did you get your message today? Of course you did. The other big increase in the sheriff was just moving over to lit public safety. And what I did was look at line by line by line, and I'm jumping a little bit, but how are you gonna take $335,000 away from him for the rotation of his cars? Can't. We talked about that. Once you do, then the following year, you got a $750,000 bill. So that kills, and I remember doing that, and I remember specifically sitting up here and said, that kills your cash flow. So I'll go to bat on that. Bother me any? I can rattle all day long.
That's the sheriff's own vehicle, too.
Then you look at the surveyor up 50, but it's contractual for the services needed for I-69. Are you gonna cut him out of that and we're gonna mess up our surveys on No. Plan commission, roughly 55,000. We hired an extra person. You know, in the business world, we bring in people to train them before our people leave. Otherwise, there's such a lag, and the person in charge doesn't get their job done because they're trying to teach another job that's not getting done because that person. So to me, that was a business move. Weights and measures went up 20,000. We went full time. The jail, 154,000.
The state told us we were,
Yeah, the state told us we're doing that. I can't believe the state didn't tell us prior to that. I'm kind of surprised.
I can't believe the state don't fund it.
Jail, well, how do you tell them that they can't have jailers to take care of the inmates? I never will. I have to trust that the commander's given me accurate numbers for proper staffing worst case scenario is that we cut 5 or 6 people and then they have a riot and then we have lawsuits that we'll never be able to pay. Maintenance went up. We anticipated that. Keith, we knew maintenance was gonna go up. We formed them last year, new department, and they got a new building. So I knew that was gonna go up. Solid waste. That's because the Colliers started recycling.
Pizza boxes.
Boxes. There was an increase of 600,000 on the highway bridge. Well, we're gonna, I'm hoping, and I thought Tony made a good presentation, and he said something that hit close to home. He said, we got 7 asphalt plants within throwing distance with I-69 coming through here. Now's the time we're gonna get the cheapest material that we're ever gonna get. And so get the necessity, get the projects that have to be done, let's get them done and get them done at a lower rate. Which takes me to the restricted and not restricted motor vehicle. Well, that's up 1.1 million. We're gonna be paving more. Probably won't be enough to keep everybody happy, but we'll be doing more. Last on my list that stuck out was EMS. And that was a chunk of change, about 775,000. But we're taking 1 BLS to ALS, and 350 of that 775 is starting the rotation on the ambulance. So you can't really cut that out. Again, that goes back to my argument on the sheriff's car. You can make the same argument and the same platform for the buses that are transporting the people. And if you look, other than moving their levy around a little bit, as we talked about, they were still within target. So those were the things. When I left here on Thursday, somebody made the comment, you got awful quiet. And for those of you who know me, which is just about everybody here, I'm not normally quiet. But when I get confused or I don't know or my head starts hurting, because I couldn't get a grasp around the figures and it was going too fast. So that's why I got quiet and it just took me a couple days. These were the big increases that I pulled off these budget sheets. I think I could go and defend all of those. Would I like to cut them all? Yeah, I'd like to pay less property taxes. I'd like to pay less taxes overall. But I think we're in a very unique situation for this county. We're about to start seeing growth like I'm thinking we never have. And if we don't get the foundation correct right now, I think for decades, even a century to come, they'll be sitting there saying, man, and I don't want that. I want 25, 50, 100 years from now, they go, how did they get it right? Well, we thought it out, and we were willing to push the envelope a little bit to make sure things were in place, that we had the foundation to get it right. So that's my 3-minute speech that went 6 minutes. I want to, again, thank all the board and the department heads that presented them, and always like a good challenge. That's why I like this office. Encourage everybody to get involved. That's it.
I just want to add that as a long-term county employee, that in the past has been mentioned, we have had these job surveys, evaluation things that never got used. I can think of at least 2 prior to this one. And I think that we all can be proud of the considerations and the chances, not the chances, but the considerations and the action that we took on these different categories, that we did study it hard, that we didn't go the lowest rate, that we respect our employees and are trying to get them on an even keel with other counties and similar occupations, and for that, I think we should be proud.
I made some calls over the weekend to a few other council members in counties nearby, and I was shocked to learn that some have to prepare all these numbers and dig all their revenue themselves. And I just want to say thank you to Dan Baston, because he makes our job much easier, even though it can be difficult at times and there's a lot of late nights that we're digging through these numbers. But you do so much for us, Dan, and prepare us, and we're a bit spoiled, and I don't know if you ever get credit for as much as you do, but there are some that don't do as much. I want to thank you for that publicly.
Thank you. Well, I put a lot of new reports in front of you. The one is the replacement of your budgets that are in your binders. This has all of the budgets recalculated with the changes that you made to the requested budgets, and then I calculated the salary and wages for each of the positions based on the midpoint that was in the midpoint that was in the WIS report, except that the sheriff's in jail is at their matrix. The dispatch, public safety dispatch 911, those wages are calculated with their matrix that you adopted or approved. And so that's the basis for all these budget numbers that are slightly changed from what you would have had last Thursday. Speaking of salaries and wages, I've provided you a report that's a working copy, a draft of the salary ordinance for 2021. I've added a couple columns that I believe we need to add to your salary ordinance. One is the WISC classification for each position, and also the Fair Labor Standards Act, the FLSA status, whether or not the position is excluded from overtime or exempt from overtime or not exempt from overtime. And I have that for every position. The one thing that I have not had time yet to do, before you adopt the salary ordinance, I'm gonna get with each of the office holders and have them provide titles for the positions that are more descriptive of the position. Your desire, if I understand it right, is that you want to eliminate the first and second deputy title and want a title that better describes what that position's responsibilities are. You'll notice throughout this that you're going to see some yellow highlighted line items and amounts. What those are the positions that are already at the current level, the 2020 pay, that are already above midpoint. And so those are where you see the highlighted amount. That is the same amount as 2020. Those did not change in accordance with your direction to do that. So we had a handful of those positions, and you'll see those scattered throughout this salary ordinance. To get this into a more reasonable number of pages for you to look through for the sheriff and jail, I have hidden all the lines that are for matrix positions that there is no one occupying right at the moment. In other words, it's blank. But whenever we get to the final, the salary ordinance that you will adopt, it will list every matrix position, and just so that throughout the year, if someone were to leave and be replaced, that we have a pay set in the salary ordinance for that new position or new person coming on. That's about all I have to say about the salary ordinance. The next thing I want to point you to is I've provided you an updated budgetary financial statement. And these are just with the updated budget amounts and the updated property tax levies. The last handout, which is a front and back handout, is a summarization of all of the funds. I have on here first group of funds I have on this report are the funds that there is a property tax levy for. And then the second group are all the other funds that there is no property tax levy. And as you can read, it works from left to right, 2020 to with the far right side is the 2021, are the 2021 numbers. You know, the strategy adopted at the Thursday with budget levies for the property tax funds was to determine the required levy in order to meet a targeted cash balance at December of 2021, a cash balance that will be sufficient to carry that fund through the first 6 months of 2022. And then we determined what that property tax levy would need to be in order to meet that targeted cash balance, and then summed up those levies and subtracted the sum of those levies from the total maximum allowable levy for the county to determine what the county general fund levy would be. And I've recalculated a few of those levies. If you had notes from Thursday and you're comparing them to these levies on this report now, you're going to see some minor changes in that. The other item I did is for the Cume Cap Development Fund, the maximum rate that you can have for that fund, which that fund is a rate-controlled fund, not a levy-controlled fund. The maximum rate you can have for that fund in 2021 is 0.0298, and based on the current certified net AV. We do have a current net AV now for taxes payable next year. Based on that, then the levy for that fund can be as much as $1,060,466. So that's the target for that fund, is to get that rate and levy. The other thing, and by now having that certified net AV, using those current net AV, using that, I've calculated what the estimated property tax rate will be for each of the funds. And based on our current net AV, the total county property tax rate is estimated to go down. Current year, the total county rate is 0.3931. For the estimated rate for 2021 is 0.3614. That's due to an increase in the levy, increase in the net AVs. We've had a lot of net AV growth. We've got a lot of, businesses and then the market adjustments for all the residential properties and so forth. So if all holds true, there's a very good likelihood that Morgan County will have a slightly lower property tax rate next year than compared to this year.
So what Dan's saying is that even though we spent a little bit more to make sure all these budgets were funded, we lowered taxes.
That's not a bad thing.
I take back all the bad things I said about Dan. Let me ask you real quick.
Sure.
With your moving of the levies, that is reflected in your financial statement.
That's
Okay,
reflected
I'm
on
making
that.
sure you've
Yeah.
moved the levy and then
Right.
did the financial
They
statement.
all
I knew,
should tie.
I know,
If they don't all tie,
you've
then
got to be tired, because I am,
you,
and you did it
you
longer
need
than
to
I
point-
have.
You need to point it out.
Okay.
But they should all tie
Okay,
together.
well, you're a good boy.
One thing flows to another. Thank you, little boy.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you, son.
We did it. I can't wait. I'm gonna digress just a little bit and take some liberties with my friendship with Keith Rhodes, but I'd love to know how you're on a title that we spent more money but lowered property taxes.
I think that's the title right there.
Yeah.
And we'll all line up around, across the front, jump up and click our heels, and you can catch us at midair, okay?
Magic.
We even want Jason in it.
You'll have them all asleep.
Yeah. We go in fine detail how we did that.
Try to
doesn't
explain
it?
this here process and how this works. You're gonna either have them all dizzy, or you're gonna have them all asleep. Or
Well,
maybe both.
that's the best news I've heard on this. Any other comments or concerns or questions? By meeting tonight, everybody feels a little bit more comfortable with. I was not comfortable Thursday morning. I was upset. But it just took a while to digest it, move things around, and
Well, I think after, Monday and Tuesday, and I think we were all reeling, our brains were reeling when we got here.
I think that this year, the structure of the budget review process is one that hopefully you'll consider strongly to do next year. Meeting a couple days, breaking away, coming back, and then once again, coming back the following week. That I think
Worked well.
works. I think that works well. I feel more comfortable with this.
And it gave you enough time in between.
With some late hours, yeah.
is there any questions or comments from the audience? It was a
Uh-oh,
hypothetical
uh-oh.
question, it wasn't,
It's a habit.
Say no additional appropriations this evening.
No, I just want to say, just because I did come from a council, so I understand how tough this can be. Obviously, I've worked with the county council, and not all of you at one time, but several different county councils. Me and Brian's pretty much came through the whole time. And with Dan, I know you guys don't get a lot of thanks, and, from being an employee, not just an office head, but and a taxpayer. you know, we're very fortunate here in Morgan County to have all of you and all the past councils for that fact that I've worked with. But, you know, I thank you. You guys got a tough job, and I know that you're getting pulled 100 different directions, and everyone's wanting something, and that's a tough position to be in, and I appreciate what you do. Dan, I greatly appreciate what he does, and he's definitely helped guide us as an office to get where we're at as well. So I just want to thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
You still don't get no more additional.
Just for this meeting, huh?
Yeah, just for tonight.
We'll meet on the 16th of September at 6:30 for the public hearing. I will tell you, when, at that public hearing, you'll not only be the public hearing for the county budget, but it will be for the Monroe Township Fire District, the Harrison Township Fire District, and for the Conservancy, Tall Oaks Conservancy District. Now, one thing I do want to tell you, for the advertised budgets in DLGF, the Gateway, and the advertised budgets, by advice from DLGF and by good practice, for these funds that, other than the Cume Capital Development and the Cume Bridge, for the other funds, the actual assessed value that we use is lower than the net AV. That is to give some cushion and protection if we find out between now and the final adoption that there was a problem with the net AV or something I don't anticipate that, of course I wouldn't, but that's just the normal. So when you get that paperwork and you're looking at it and you think, okay, Dan, you big liar, why is this rate higher? But the levy amount will be the same. Levy amount is going to be the same.
Any other comments from the board? Hearing none.
Motion to adjourn?
Have a motion on the floor to adjourn. Do I have a second? Have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
I'm glad we had this meeting tonight. I am.